Hi, I'm Eric from Pivot. We're at IC 2026. Welcome. We're talking to you about Pivot, our AV Lifecycle Management platform. So at its foundation, Pivot is a data platform designed to help integrators and customers work together proactively on managing AV systems. And so at its core, we use the data to drive proactivity in 4 core workflows. So there's a deploy workflow that takes from the moment you've decided on your bill of materials through to how you commission the system, and how data can help with making that more efficient, consistent, and drive better standardization and day one success. Then there's an incident workflow that helps with saving time and pinpointing root cause and resolving incidents. There's a scheduled maintenance workflow that helps with planning and executing scheduled maintenance. And then because it's data at its core, it's using that data to plan and refresh more effectively. So I'll get into it. I'll start actually from the middle where the incident workflow is, and I'll work to the deploy and then scheduled maintenance. So when you enter the product, you hit the dashboard. So we're hitting the incident dashboard. We can see we have 4 incidents open, so I'll just click into a meeting room here. And you can see this is maybe a typical integrated meeting room with UC engine, some microphones, DSP, cameras. And so anything in green represents a product receiving live data. Anything in gray represents an asset in the room that cannot be monitored. And then anything red represents a device that is collecting data and has an incident. So in this case, we can see that we've driven an alert on the buffer state. Not typically an alert at 60%, but for the purposes of ISE, we're going to drive this alert and show how the incident process works. So now that we understand we've got an incident in the room, maybe we need to be familiarized with what's in the room. So we have the ability to go to the documentation tab and view pictures of the room, the drawing if we need to see that, user guides, and program files if necessary. But today what we're showing is Pivot Assist. So this is the ability for AV professionals to really accelerate the ability to resolve issues. And so we've got the incident prepped here for Pivot Assist, which is a multi-agent tool, AI architecture that first will analyze everything about the room. So it knows the devices in the room, it knows the live data of the room, and basically what it's doing is summarizing what it's seeing. And so what I like to highlight is that log files are a really good, rich source of data for error and troubleshooting. But let's face it, none of us want to take the time to read them, and in some cases they're very hard to read. So what you can see right here is that Pivot Assist, because it's machine technology, can quickly review that log file and identify the errors that are occurring inside the log file that might be relevant to the ticket. So in this case, it's highlighted that it's seeing repeated pings to devices that are not responding, which is driving accumulation in the error log, right? And so just for the brevity of this, I'll show kind of the multi-agent capability. So let's say we needed to do an action on the device. So inside of Pivot, we need to turn on maintenance mode. So I'm just going to turn this off for a second. So within Pivot Assist, we can say turn on. So we're going to turn on maintenance mode. We'll send a remote reboot command to the device, and then we'll generate an incident summary. So just quick demonstration of how in the future you'll be able to drive complete incident resolution inside of a chat interface. So now if we just refresh. Oh, you know what? Would you? So maintenance mode has been successfully enabled, so sorry. So now it's on and you can see it was done by Pivot Assist. And then we just enter that chat again. And so now we want to reboot the control system. And so what this is going to do is generate the reboot command for the device. And so it sees two control systems here. So we're going to do control system 2. Okay, and so this action requires approval. So inside of Pivot, we have a two-factor verification for commands. So yes. Okay, and so now in the commands request, we can now see that we've got a reboot command. And so basically that entire workflow can be done inside of Pivot Assist, and then we can go, if we were to approve this, I'm going to not do this because that's actually this is kind of a live demo, but if we go back into the room, we can now ask it to, okay, can you and so then it'll generate the incident summary. So basically you can do your interaction. Obviously with more complicated troubleshooting, you'd have more back and forth, and then it'll summarize it, and then you can send that to your ticketing platform. So Pivot now has a full API for its incident, so for asset management and for incident, which now allows you to, and you can see here that it basically gives kind of like a very standardized summary that runs over like what happened, what was the issue, what was the diagnosis, and what actions you took, right? So overall, what we're trying to do is really help drive efficiency in that incident process and good documentation and process. And so that kind of takes you through an update on how resolving incidents, but we're also releasing the automation engine. So the automation engine pairs with Pivot Assist, but the automation engine's purpose is for the things you know how to fix, you code that. So the automation engine is built on our rules engine. So when you create an automation, you're selecting an alert or a rule that already exists, and you're just coding an action to take place on top of it. So when you think about kind of the workflow, an incident comes in, if the rule that was triggered has a automation, that'll run. The incident won't get triggered yet in terms of an alert to a human. If the automation is successful, that just gets logged as a resolution. If the automation doesn't work, it triggers the alert, and then you can use Pivot Assist to run through. So what I'll show here is just, let's take a very typical one. Let's say you have Dante devices on your network, and if they go offline, you want to trigger a port reboot on the switch in order to show that. So basically you have an alert that's, if a device goes offline, in this particular case we're saying anytime it's a microphone, I want to restart the connected port. And so Pivot knows from the asset table that, let's say a given microphone went offline, it looks for what switch and port that device is on, and it'll trigger the reboot on that port. And so you would see that logging of that activity anytime inside of the room history. So Pivot has the full log history of all events. So this would be human related and automation related inside of the room for full audit history. And so the other thing that we're showing here is that we've updated our UX to make it easier for day-to-day maintenance of the room. So before we would drive everyone to the all devices table, now inside of the room you have the spreadsheet version or the cloud editable table, which means that if a technician is going into the room and has to edit, let's say, the Tessera Forte, and they're actually upgrading it, now you can quickly switch the device in the room and save this. So as long as you are not switching the device category, so let's say your room design stays the same, all you're doing is upgrading parts inside of it, you can now do that directly from inside of the room. If you are actually changing the design of your room, we now have the add delete button up here, which then drives what change order. So that becomes a documented change to your room design and kicks you into a modal that'll take you through how to add or change devices in your room. So all kind of user experience improvements to the day-to-day maintenance and currency of your system. Okay, so now that kind of wraps up sort of the upgrades on the incident workflow. And so now I'm going to go back to the dashboard and I'm going to start from a different point. I'm going to start from our room deployment. So now it's like, how did we get to a monitored state, right? And so what we've invested in over the last 12 months is improving the way that you onboard into the product. So there's now a complete workflow. So when you start in Pivot, you upload a bill of materials, and that's your starting point. And now you can begin the room deployment workflow inside of the product. And so this view here is a project manager view of all the rooms that are in deployment right now. So you can see real-time progress of every room that's actually being deployed. So that is taking feedback from every checklist and letting you know the progress of the project. How this gets started is down here in Room Check, we have predefined questions. So Pivot provides you with a database of questions that are basically created for digital signage deployments, small, medium, large, and integrated boardrooms. Obviously, if you're doing lecture halls or multi-purpose spaces, you're going to need a custom set of questions to reflect the specifics of your design. But out of the box, you get a database of questions that's very typical for AV deployments. You as the end customer or the integrator can create your custom database of questions. And then what we're now rolling out is the ability to do device profiles. So now, based on a specific model category or down to a part number, you can specify standard configurations for those devices. And so now Pivot room checklist, so I'll jump into a room now. So now the checklist takes all the relevant questions inside of your database and brings them together into this live multi-user checklist that provides real-time status of your deployment. So we bring the asset table in so that, again, users can quickly add asset data very easily. They can complete progress questions based on your standard deployment workflow. When your system is being monitored, we help you understand, are all of your devices connected? So this is the live status of are they now online and reporting into Pivot? From the networking standpoint, you can check to see that all your devices are patched properly. So this reads the switch ports and tells you, hey, are you patched properly? And those configurations we just saw, they become automated configurations here that you can now send directly to the device. So you kind of do all of your staging, you get your monitoring set up, you push your configurations, and then whether it's you as a university, integrators, everybody's got a bit of a secret sauce in how they commission the final performance and user experience. And so those checks can be defined by you, and again, all real-time editable. And we also have the mobile-friendly version of the checklist, which makes it super easy for technicians in installation because they're generally not carrying their laptop. They can quickly edit, and then that would be reflected in the platform for any project manager that's looking for status of the system. So really trying to reduce, again, any administration, all of that trouble trying to follow up at the end of the day to figure out where you're at with your deployment. But more so, the added benefit for the monitoring piece is that we like to say remote management ready. So this commissioning workflow ensures that getting your system to monitor is not a project at the end of your project. It's integrated into your deployment workflow, integrated into the cost that you already have for your system, not some extra cost at the end of your project. So now I'll transition to our third workflow, which is scheduled maintenance. So put together a dashboard here that basically gives a human the information they need to properly plan the maintenance of their system. So we're looking at firmware, we're looking at contract management, reliability of your rooms, and then any open incidents, right? And so that gives you in one dashboard the ability to sit down for an hour or two and say, what are we gonna do over the next 2 days to bring the system back to currency? And so with the firmware, we're using the live data from your devices paired with our ability to obtain information from the manufacturers about the current firmware versions and putting that together in a simple dashboard that basically tells you, here's what yours installed, here's what's outdated, and then you as the users can say, hey, we're gonna update our boardrooms this weekend, and so what needs to be updated? Now, currently you cannot push firmware from Pivot, but that is coming. We'll start with the cloud integrations, and we are working on some R&D with how to use Pivot Access to push firmware files, but that has proved to be a bit more complicated. So the very first release will be simply enabling integrations and the ability to trigger firmware from the platform. And then the final workflow, well, actually, I'll show just the quick QBR. So what we're now showing is basically a quarterly or a quarterly business room. So that interaction between a service provider and their end customer. Dashboard that allows you to quickly understand, like, how are we performing, right? How are we doing as a team? So rooms are grouped as high, medium, low. And then basically all of your incident data is tracked against those SLAs. So in a very quick view, you're able to see sort of your alert activity, how much open and resolved alerts are we having over a given period, and then how are we tracking against our objectives for service to our end users. And then the final piece is our Lifecycle dashboard. So warranty, end of life, end of service, so very similar to firmware. We're taking data from the platform and merging that with manufacturer data to give you insights about how to plan refreshes. So we also think in this it's relevant to look at reliability, so you can look at it over periods like last month, or you can generate, with a custom range, take a year's data and try to understand it. And very similar to the firmware, we can just click through here and look at anything that's expiring within a given period. So just making that planning process much, much simpler for all users involved. So that covers a lot of the major updates related to the experience with the platform. I'll just cover a couple of key updates related to support for manufacturers. So inside of our integrations, we've added YLink and Logi and AppSpace, and I'll show you just one quick neat feature that we've deployed with AppSpace that shows verification. But we now have over 53 manufacturers supported on our Pivot Access and 12 integrations built for cloud to cloud. And so I'll just round out the demo with, so on the digital signage side, we've been working with AppSpace. They provided some insights about what their end users are looking for as an extension of the AppSpace cloud. So what we're showing here is that you have a simple digital signage network with AppSpace, BrightSign, and Samsung displays. And you can see that we have the AppSpace data coming in. We have our channel playlist, so we can pull that down so you can see what is playing. And then below that, we've got our BrightSign data coming in, and we now have the ability to bring in the snapshot. So we're now getting what's actually on the player itself to the display, and we know that the display's on and the input in. So other than a smash display that's still reporting on the network, we have a verification path now for playback on digital signage. So we're really happy to kind of bring that to the market. And so I think that covers the updates from Pivot 2026. Thank you.